Hello, I am David Silber speaking for the Drisha Institute. We are presenting a series of podcasts on prayer and niggun, prayer and melody, focusing on the prayers of the high holidays of the Yamim Noraim. The heart and soul of the Rosh Hashanah service consists of the sounding of the Shofar and the blessings in the Musaf, in the additional service of Rosh Hashanah, which have three themes: God's kingship, Remembrances, which has to do with judgment and covenant, and finally Shofarot, which has to do with revelation. The Shofar is actually sounded together with the Amidah. After each of the three intermediate blessings, the Shofar is sounded. But in addition to that, the practice has been for many, many years to sound the Shofar before the Amidah. After the morning service has been completed, after the Torah has been read, we are sounding the Shofar. The Shofar is an instrument of coronation. It proclaims God as king. On the other hand, the Shofar is sounded not only with a plain sound, but with a broken sound. With a broken sound that represents a cry, a prayer. So the Shofar is both. On one hand, it's the proclamation that God is king, and the practice of the Ashkenazic community is to read chapter 47 before we sound the Shofar. Zamru Elohim Zameru calls upon the entire world to proclaim God as king. Zamru, to sing, to cry out with song that God is king. There is, in addition to that, the broken sound that we'll come to later. So before we sound the Shofar on Rosh Hashanah, it's one of those solemn moments, one of those incredibly powerful moments in terms of the year. So let's hear a meditation appropriate before the sounding of the Shofar. This is a niggun written by Michal of Zlochev, one of the Zlochev niggunim, played by Laura the cellist. The Musaf service of Rosh Hashanah is unique. There are 3 blessings in the middle of the Amidah. Typically, on the Shabbat and the festivals, there are 7 blessings. 3 beginning blessings, 3 concluding blessings, 1 blessing in the middle, which speaks of the sacred day, the holy day. But on Rosh Hashanah, there are 3 blessings. And after each of the blessings, the first is God's kingship, God's remembrances. The day of Rosh Hashanah is called in the liturgy the day of remembrance, Yom HaZikaron. And finally, the Shofar. After each of these blessings, the Shofar is sounded. And after the Shofar is sounded, there's a little prayer. Arashes Vatenu, Yerav Lefanecha. We ask God to pay attention, to listen carefully to Arashes Vatenu. The word Areshet actually appears only 1 time in the entire Bible, and it's very unclear what it means. Some translate our utterances, others translate our desires. In any event, God should hear our desires, our utterances. God should pay attention, God should listen carefully, and God should respond to our prayer. So Arashes Vatenu presumes that we are praying. It's a prayer with actually the shofar has no words. It's a prayer without words. Perhaps because on Rosh Hashanah we stand in judgment, we're not exactly sure what to say. We want God perhaps to interpret our feelings, to interpret our desires, and to respond to us accordingly. So there are 3 Arashes, 1 after the blessing of kingship, 1 after the blessing of remembrances, 1 after the blessing of shofarot. Let's listen to 3 different renditions, 3 different niggunim for Arashes Vatenu. The first 2 will be played by Abaye on piano, and the third by the trio of Abaye, Laura, and Jordan. The second tune for Arashes Tzvatenu is an interesting story. That is a tune that was written for Arashes Tzvatenu by one of the Mudritzer Rebbes, the second Mudritzer Rebbe, and afterwards people began to sing it to El Adon. It's not exactly the way it was composed. The composition was a bit different. We have played it the way it's commonly sung, but it's written for Arashes Tzvatenu. And in the original composition, you get the sense of the pathos. It was written at a very difficult time for the Jewish community. There were many difficult times. And the El Adon, often when it's sung, doesn't pick that up. And of course, the words of El Adon are different. Arashes Tzvatenu yerav lefanecha, we plead with God to listen very carefully. Mevin umazin, mabit umakshiv, to listen carefully, perhaps even interpret for us our deepest feelings, our deepest needs. So that is the tune that was actually written for Arashes Tzvatenu. It's interesting to note that the Hasidic Rebbes and others who wrote music in the Hasidic world, often the niggunim have no words, but often they're written for a very particular prayer, and it's interesting to think about which are the prayers that they decided to write music for. Arashes Tzvatenu is certainly one of them. When we come to Yom Kippur, we'll encounter another prayer that there were countless number of niggunim written for that particular prayer. That a particular prayer that spoke to the Rebbes in a very profound way. Let's listen now to the third rendition. It's interesting to note we have three blessings, we have three Arashes, and it's interesting actually that the blessings, the standard nusach of the three blessings is similar, but there are some minor differences. For example, the first blessing about God's kingship is often in a major key. The blessing of Remembrances and Shofar is often in a minor key. God's kingship is we are proclaiming God as king. But when it comes to remembrances, we see ourselves as being judged, as standing in judgment. And we see the shofar as a prayer, a broken cry. There we go back to what is often emblematic of Jewish music, namely the minor key. So Rosh Hashanah has at its core God's kingship. Of course, the king is also a judge. The king also makes appearances. The king is present, or often present. And this takes us back to the core prayer of Rosh Hashanah, Melocha kol ha'olam kulo b'chvodecha. We ask God to reign over the entire world. Rosh Hashanah has a universal cast to it. Many of the Jewish prayers do not. Rosh Hashanah has a universal cast. Melocha kol ha'olam, reign over the entire world, kulo, all of it. Hinosei kol ha'aretz bikarecha. Again, manifest hofaba darg onu zecha al kol yoshvei tevel adzecha. Be revealed to all of the world, all the inhabitants of the earth. Yeda kol pulo, everyone should know that you created them, etc. So that's Rosh Hashanah. It refers back to the creation of the world. As we say in our prayers, Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the beginning of the world. The Rosh Hashanah service assumes, even though Rosh Hashanah is called the 7th month, it's the beginning, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's the beginning of the year. Let's hear a melody now from Shlomo Carlebach to the words, Melocha kol ha'olam kulo b'chvodecha, reign over the entire world. In the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, we are sounding the shofar in the middle of our prayers. So the shofar is a prayer. The shofar is the broken sound. And it represents our sense of insufficiency. We don't even have the words yet to formulate, to address our own needs. But the shofar, on the other hand, is also an instrument which proclaims God's kingship. It's a joyous instrument. Psalm 150, Ha'ulu b'teika shofar, praise God with the shofar, with the sounding of the shofar. The shofar, we have the plain sound called the tekiah, and we have the truah, the broken sound. We should never forget that Rosh Hashanah is a solemn day, but it's also a festival. So let's hear a niggun that's appropriate for the shofar, a joyous niggun that reflects the fact that Rosh Hashanah is a happy day, a festive day, a day in which God is declared king, a day of coronation, a day of rejoicing. On behalf of Drisha, thank you for listening. We look forward to the 3 upcoming podcasts on Yom Kippur. We hope you will enjoy them and find them meaningful. Thank you.